All right, now we're live. How's it going, everybody? It's the Joe Lo Fox News, my channel where I talk about anime, video game, cartoons, most notably Sonic and Ninja Turtles. And today we are discussing the DCEU. And today I'm here with my rare opportunity, but my second guest I've ever had on this channel, SSJ Namikaze.
What's up? What's up? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, thanks for suggesting this idea. I was kind of like, well, yeah, if you're down, I'm like, yeah, sure. We can definitely talk about the DCU because we've been talking about it here and there on Jay Leno's stream or in Mal Fortress's stream and all that. So,
Yeah, and I figured it would be something interesting because both of us have many different opinions on this DCEU when the DCEU first came out, and then it unfortunately came to an end a couple of years ago with James Gunn taking over and rebranding the DCEU to the DCU. So I figured we kind of just take a look back on some of the movies that came out, what worked, what didn't work, and kind of just why this universe didn't succeed the way that Warner Brothers wanted it to.
exactly. All right. So let's see. Hang on one second.
Yeah, I'm checking my notes here. Let me see.
So basically, to all you guys out there, so basically, if you notice, usually like I have like a lot of hot takes and like some controversial opinions and stuff here and there. Since it kind of just works for me, kind of like SSJ. I love that
Y-
Daredevil 2003 movie and Elektra and all that stuff, or Green Lantern,
Yeah.
or
Oh yeah.
my yeah, my special like in my favorite Spider-Man stuff is Andrew Garfield and all that. Um, but yeah, and even some Sonic takes, like, I'm going to just throw Sonic out there, but kind of like I think Chris Thorndike isn't really that bad of a character as everybody makes him out to be. But
Oh, no, that's
while
a
the
hot
DC,
take.
right, and while the DCU isn't exactly like perfect, I think that those movies definitely age pretty well, especially compared to like some Marvel movies. Because if you look at like BVS and if you look at Captain America: Civil War and Infinity War and Endgame, I think BVS probably aged the best compared to how well, kind of sort of how things turned out. You know what I mean? But yeah,
Okay.
and despite the whole internet discourse where it's not really like nearly even as close as like the worst superhero movies and stuff. I mean, after like Aquaman 2019, like a lot of those movies definitely went downhill. And since they're kind of going back to like that lighthearted and campy stuff, they're kind of regressing and becoming more of a knockoff version of like Marvel, if anything, and kind of just playing it
Yes.
safe for like those critical scores. That's just my opinion, though.
Yes, I definitely agree with you on that one. I feel like the DCEU could have been unique if they would have kept the consistent tone and would have just stood by on their storytelling. Because to me, what made the DCEU more interesting than the Marvel universe is that it had a darker tone and a darker feel compared to the friendly, lighthearted tone, family friendly with the quips and jokes and one-liners that we always are seeing in Marvel movies past the first Avengers movie. So I always appreciated the darker tone that DC did have.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus, it was a lot more like thought provoking in a way, too, like it really gets you thinking and stuff. And Marvel movies, I mean, not to say I don't appreciate or like the Marvel movies, but it's just like, it's just like a good, that was a good little dopamine rush, but it was like, but I forget about it like the next day or something.
Right. So, in case people are checking in on the stream, what is the DCEU? The DCEU is basically the DC extended universe that kind of kickstarted with Man of Steel back in 2013, and then continued with Batman versus Superman, Justice League, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, so on and so forth. So, out of these movies, what would you say worked and didn't work?
I'm glad you actually said that because I actually have a list of movies, and I'll probably ask you this too. But
Okay.
some of my favorite DCU movies, I would definitely say is and I haven't seen all of the DCU movies because there's some that I haven't seen. Like, well, I just saw The Flash last night, as I was telling you in the behind the scenes. But I haven't seen Aquaman 2 yet or Shazam 2, so I can't really say. But
Okay.
movies I did like from the DCU is Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, of course Snyder's Justice League, Shazam, Suicide Squad, which the first one I know is a hot take. and low key kind of Black Adam. I didn't think Black Adam was like half bad.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's like vast majority of it. But the ones, yeah, I definitely didn't like was Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman 1984, and what is it? Oh yeah, and The Flash. So yeah.
Yeah. I
Although
think we're about the same as far as what we liked and didn't like, and what we thought worked and didn't.
exactly. Like, I mean, Blue Beetle, it could have been better, but but yeah, but Wonder Woman 1984, I don't know. I might give that another chance someday. Birds of Prey. Yeah, there's nothing that's convincing me in this entire world that that was ever a good movie.
Yeah, Birds of Prey definitely was not a good film. It was basically a Harley Quinn film disguised as a Birds of Prey movie. They didn't do a good job with Black Canary, who's actually one of my favorite DC female characters. As part
Uh,
of the original Silver Age Justice League and Green Arrow comic, she's one of my favorite female hand-to-hand fighters in DC, and they ruined her. Huntress was
yeah.
also played by, she was played by a great actress, I think Elizabeth something from Sky High, but
Oh,
she was
so
wasted too.
yeah. Yeah, I guess we got that in common because they ruined another one of my favorite female characters in DC, that being Cassandra Cain.
Yeah,
I
I
was
like Cassandra Cain too.
right. I was
Yeah.
like, wait, who is this? Why is she talking so much? And why is she looking up to Harley Quinn of all people? It was like,
It's
yeah,
like they made her like the little girl from the first Rush Hour movie.
right. And like, it's funny too because I remember like when that movie came out, I was like, well, because at first they were like, oh, it's Birds of Prey, but then I think at the last minute, and this could be just me, but then they just retitled it Harley Quinn and the whatever and so on and so on and all that. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it had like a long title that people didn't like, so they just changed it to just Birds of Prey. It was like Birds of Prey and Harley Quinn and the Fantabulous Amazing Emancipation,
Emancipated.
or
Yep,
something like that.
exactly. Then what else was I going to say? Something about can't remember. Birds of Prey. Yeah, but yeah, that's pretty much yeah that. And oh yeah, they left out Oracle too. Out of like, I'm like, how do you leave out Oracle in a Birds of Prey movie? Like that don't
Yeah,
make any
she's the
sense,
most important member.
right? Like she was the one that started this whole thing. But yeah, that's
Right.
crazy.
Okay, so you might disagree, but I think pretty much the DCEU kind of failed, or not failed, but they kind of lost focus and shifted after Batman versus Superman. They lost their focus and changed direction. And at that time, Zack Snyder's control was undermined as he was blamed and quietly being removed. People were blaming all of the negative things, especially when it comes to the story or box office performance on Zack Snyder, and that's when we kind of started to see the pivot. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that because yeah. Even though like here's how I just look at it. BVS, like I said, I think it's a great movie and I feel like maybe some people would need to like take another look at it again because they probably like saw it, reacted however they, but that's because, it's a theatrical release and all that stuff. So a lot of stuff was like really cut and all that. And on top of that, they kind of just rushed to BVS when really we were supposed to get like Man of Steel 2 first and then that Batman movie or whichever order. And I think,
Yeah,
yeah, like that would have made sense if like, oh, okay, we got those movies and then we got BVS where they meet up. I think that would be awesome. And
yeah,
yeah, but I feel like, and this is probably the problem with WB now and DC Studios is that they kind of want instant success. Like they want like a quick, they want like a little, like
they
easy
want that
money.
Avengers.
Exactly. And you can't like really get that without at least building it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And it's kind of like those monster movies like Godzilla and King Kong, like what they got going on currently in the 2020s, where you
yeah,
have, yeah, where you got like King Kong and all that. And he's got his own movies doing his own thing. Then you
yeah.
got,
And Godzilla had his own couple of films before they met up.
yeah, exactly. Before they did like a versus and then another crossover and all that. Like you could have easily done that with Batman and Superman. That would have been perfect right there. But I feel like yeah, WB they rushed a lot of stuff, and then for BVS they like cut the movie with the theatrical release and all that, and that's why it's like oh, why let's say like they're mostly focusing on Batman. either because he's their golden goose or he's that character that they're kind of trying to introduce and stuff. Since we already have our introduction with Superman, and a lot of Superman scenes like him as Clark Kent and investigating and all that stuff is pretty much cut in the theatrical release because I just like rewatched it since I just bought the thing on DVD and I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
I can see why people didn't like the theatrical release. But Ultimate Edition, oh my god, this is great.
Now, I will say this because I didn't like Batman versus Superman upon when I first saw it those many years ago. Still kind of had those feelings, but at the same time, my main takeaway was I still liked Ben Affleck as Batman. He was great. I still I still liked the whole Superman like the political thing that surrounded Superman, um somebody coming to Earth that's an alien and you don't know if you can trust them or not. I thought that that was done pretty well because around that time we were getting into the political aspect of superheroes. They were kind of like borrowing from Marvel at the time that was doing Civil War, where it was like hero versus hero, and you have that political standpoint where is the hero really allowed to actually do anything as far as stepping in and doing things outside of the government's control. So I think Batman versus Superman did a really good job with that as well, and as well as building up from Man of Steel.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I definitely did. Yeah, that was definitely an interesting take too, with the whole society and all that stuff, like and the public and the media and stuff, because those are very important like moments and stuff. And it's like, oh, you know what I mean? Because obviously in our real world and stuff, we're gonna be like, oh, this is a godlike alien just living amongst us, and we don't know
Hmm.
what side he's on, and we saw the kind of damage he can do and all that. So it kind of does make sense from like, let's say Batman's point of view, where he doesn't know Superman like that yet. So a lot of people like that have complaints about the movie and stuff is like, well, why is Batman trying to kill Superman? Because he doesn't know him, and he thinks he's a like danger to like the world and all that stuff, like how he was in Man of Steel with General Zod and stuff, and how much like pandemonium and like mayhem that costs. So it makes sense to me.
Yeah, and especially like you just said, the beginning part of the movie where you see the Man of Steel movie take place from Batman, or Ben Affleck Bruce Wayne's perspective in Metropolis. I thought that that
Yeah,
was done well to kind of convey, like, hey, I don't like this guy. Like, it's him that's causing trouble or whatever, and I have to take him out because we don't know if he's a threat.
right. And not to sound funny or anything, but it's kind of like, well, like 9/11 and stuff, kind of like one of those little like you know, with all that damage
Yeah.
and stuff and like all those people in terror and all that. Like that would make a lot more sense and stuff.
Yeah, I'd say
And
it's comparable. Like that event that happened, I think it's called the negative zero event that happened in 2013's Man of Steel. That's
yeah, the black
comparable to that, or the Black Zero. I'm sorry. Yeah, you
yeah,
got
you're
it.
good.
The
Yep,
Black
Black
Zero.
Zero of it.
The Black Zero event was basically the DCEU's like kind of version of 9/11, where it's catastrophic and a lot of people have PTSD. A lot of deaths happen due to Superman and General Zod's fight and destruction throughout Metropolis.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, but for me though, like yeah, BVS it's a sequel to Man of Steel and stuff. Released of course back in March 2016. I actually remember that because that was around the time of my like birthday around that time, and I was like, because I remember Civil War was coming out later that year. It came out the same year as BVS actually, which was kind of funny. And
Yeah.
I actually have a yearbook and stuff from my school where I think it had like BVS and what you call it in Civil War. So if I ever find my yearbook, I might show the audience. I might show you too, SSJ. But
Okay.
yeah, it was definitely talked about for sure. And I remember that was like when that first Deadpool movie came out. I was like, yeah. And at the time, I was a little bit of an MCU stans. I was kind of like, I don't know about BVS and all that, but I'm more of a Marvel fan, and I'm more so into the X-Men really than the MCU. But Deadpool, I was like, all
Yeah.
right, sign me up. So yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, but no, I definitely eased up on it. And I was like, you know what, BVS is pretty good, but it's also like the first live action like crossover movie too between like Superman and Batman. So Like,
So it has
them
to have
making
some credit. People have to give it some kind of credit for that because it's Batman
exact
and Superman on screen together in live action.
yeah, and the first big appearance of like Wonder Woman on screen. Like that movie
Hmm.
automatically is iconic, like whether you like it or not, or whether it's
Whether you like it or
controversial
not,
or
yeah.
exactly or divisive, it's still like probably one of the most iconic comic book movies for those reasons.
Plus, this Batman was able to defeat Superman on screen, so you can't really say that much about other Batman that were on live action.
Mm, yeah, well, yeah, that is true. You can't really say that because I mean they
I
never
guess
really
if you want to
dealt with.
count Michael Keaton defeating that Kryptonian in
Oh yeah,
the Flash, but he got right back up
yeah. I was about to say he
after he
got back
passed
up
out.
and like he
So
slammed Batman like and killed him. So
yeah. So if anybody wants to give that argument about Ben Affleck being a bad Batman, I mean, hey, he defeated Superman on screen. Like
that's true.
Superman looked like he was about to cry when he had that kryptonite spear on him,
Well, to be
telling him he's
honest,
not a man.
yeah, to be honest, he was stepping on his throat though.
Yeah, and he was stepping on his throat too.
Yeah. But nah,
So
Superman that was his first time to Kryptonite. Although it was Batman's first time fighting somebody like as powerful as Superman, so it's kind of like even, you know,
yeah,
because like the first time Superman ever went, like at least in post crisis, first time he ever went up against somebody with Kryptonite, it was Metallo, and Superman like lost against Metallo. And was like, I don't understand. How am I? I never felt like this sick a day in my life. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
But yeah,
Now, before we wrap up Batman versus Superman, I'll kind of get in a little bit on this because I know you said that you kind of like you liked the Lex Luthor take and
oh
some
yeah,
certain other thing elements in the movie. I'll just kind of get this out the way real quick. While I still like while I think Batman versus Superman is a better movie than what I thought it was initially, I still do not care for the Lex Luthor take from Jesse Eisenberg, and I did not like the Doomsday, how they use Doomsday as like a General Zod body, and then put him in a chrysalis to kind of make Doomsday. Like I kind of I understand what Zack Snyder was trying to do when he wanted to like use the poetry and have like Lex Luthor use his own blood to create a monster to destroy the god that is Superman. But I think they should have just went with the original Doomsday from Krypton. That's just me.
yeah. I see. Oh, I see what you mean. I definitely took down a lot of notes about that. You want to definitely go into that Lex Luthor thing?
Yeah, we can.
All right, sweet. Hang on one second.
We got a lot of people too. What's up,
Oh,
Prince of Geeks? What's up, Jay Leno, if you're still here? And what's up, Dr. Hino 419?
what's up, Doctor Hino? It's been a minute. What's up? What's happening in Upward Ninja, bro?
What is
But
up
yeah,
where?
let's see. All right, here we go. So as you already know, I made that video the other day talking about like DCU Lex Luthor and why I think personally I think he's a great movie villain and all that. And there's definitely stuff I had too that I was saving for the stream and stuff. So I know it's a little bit easy to kind of dismiss this like version of Lex as like he's a joke based off of like the way how he looks and how he speaks and stuff. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I did too. I'm not gonna pretend like I, was like, oh, well, this is definitely Lex Luthor. But there's a lot of like definitely hidden undertones with his character that I feel like makes him like very complex. While he is based off of like a modern like billionaire and stuff who like like the guys who created Facebook or X or Google and stuff like that, like Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg and all them. Um, yeah, there's also like a mythological aspect to it. Like Lex, he kind of views himself as like a Prometheus like figure in Greek mythology. Like the story about Prometheus SSJ.
Oh yeah, Prometheus, like in Greek mythology.
Yeah. So Lex is like in this, he resembles like Prometheus. And Prometheus, he may be like a titan and all that stuff or a god, but he stood up for humanity as well as being like its creator because Zeus, he views humanity like he views humans as subjects.
Oh, you still there?
But, and he also did things like he introduced, the concept of fire to humans and stuff so that they can cook food and forge weapons and all that. and because of that, Prometheus he was punished for doing the right thing. So in this case, Superman is Zeus, Lex is Prometheus, and the fire that's pretty much the kryptonite, the Kryptonian ship, and Doomsday itself. That's the fire. And even though Lex's fate is kind of just him going to prison and stuff, it also mirrors Prometheus in a way too, in a more twisted kind of way. And the reason why I
Yeah.
bring up Prometheus is because during Lex's speech, he actually brought up Prometheus. Like if you remember, like when Batman was trying to steal that information from Lex Luthor back at his party at his house and stuff, Lex, in his ramblings, I know he kind of rambles a lot, but he's always foreshadowing something.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I remember now. I remember he said that at the party while he was speaking with. This was when Clark and Bruce met each other, right? And then Bruce went down to
Prometheus.
get that information.
Exactly. And then he kind of already knew like where this is going to go and stuff. But yeah. So yeah, and it's also kind of ironic too because Wonder Woman she was there and she when she heard Lex bring up Zeus, she was like, "Oh my god!" Like rolled her eyes because I guess in this universe, Zeus is supposed to be like her dad and all that, or her creator.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So yeah, but like Prometheus, Lex is known for his cunning and his deception, or his and just his love for humanity over like aliens and stuff like that. Not to
Right.
mention, not to mention like the painting that Lex had like turned upside down by the end of the movie and stuff, where he was talking about devils don't come from hell beneath us; they come from the
But they
sky.
come from the sky.
Yeah, he's not only talking about just how he views Superman, but he's also foreshadowing Darkseid and Steppenwolf, which Zack Snyder has said because there's a reaction to him on YouTube where he's like reacting to or explaining his thought process of Batman versus Superman and all that. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and that was even a deleted scene where we see him get into the Kryptonian ship and he sees the message from Steppenwolf with the mother box.
Oof, that's pretty good.
So
But
I
yeah,
do think you're right as far as like this is a smart Lex Luthor, but I just don't like the way they portrayed him, where he was just like a jester almost, and like he was like swindling to get some information out of the government. Like when he wanted to get like access to the Kryptonian ship and Zod's body, like he's being like all handsy with the guy and like opens
yeah,
up a cherry
putting
Jolly
that
Rancher and
Jolly
puts it in the
Rancher.
Jolly Rancher
Yeah,
in the guy's mouth and starts licking his fingers. I'm like, Lex Luthor would not do that.
yeah. I'm not gonna lie, that was pretty weird. I mean, I get it. It's to show he's got dominance and control over him. But that aside, though, I mean, I get that you can't really take this Lex that seriously when it comes like when you like look at him at first, even though he is still kind of a mass murderer, a terrorist, and like he's done all various types of crimes throughout that whole movie. But I mean, it's just kind of like, we want this, like, we know BVS is a serious movie. And Lamps, I
Yeah.
mean, I said Lamps. Lex, he's a bit of a campy character, like, sort of a campy-ish, not, you can't take him so seriously type of character. And yet people are saying, oh, I want campy Superman. Oh, I want lighthearted, blah, blah, blah. And as you saw in like that recent clip, oh, well, I'm not sure if you saw it or not, but in that little I said Jimmy Kimmel clip where
Yeah, where he's like
yeah,
yelling at Lex Luthor.
yeah, and like Lex, I mean, we don't really see much of his personality throughout the movie yet, even though it's kind of a little robotic and stoic in the trailers. But in that scene, he's like joking around with Superman, talking about some I don't know what you're talking about. I don't got your dog, ugly dog in a cape, like stuff like that. I'm like, so if people can like, yeah, like it's almost the same kind of thing. Almost, it's just like, all right. So if you guys can accept this Lex being a little campy or him being a little jokey, we can accept Jesse Eisenberg's Lex being a little campy. The only difference is that version of Lex is already bald and looks like Lex Luthor compared to Jesse Eisenberg, who gets the look later down the line.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, people need to have that same energy. But I don't know. It's just the way Jesse Eisenberg, like, he didn't come off as Lex to me until the very end of Batman versus Superman, when he got his head shaved before Batman sent him to Arkham Asylum. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
it wasn't until Justice League, whichever version you prefer, you see him at the end of the movie on the yacht ship telling Deathstroke about his plan. That's when he
right.
really feels like Lex Luthor, Brett.
Oh
Throughout
yeah,
Batman versus Superman, outside of him getting Batman and Superman to fight each other, and him basically getting General Zod's body to resurrect Doomsday to kill Superman, he felt like the Riddler through and through.
Yeah, he did. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I mean, it's meant to kind of make him a little bit more kind of compelling. Like, you got this interesting, youthful character and stuff like that. Which it's ironic, and I'm not saying this is you saying this, but this is like, for people that be like criticizing Zack Snyder so much, it's like, yeah, but if you're saying that Zack Snyder, all of his movies are so serious and blah blah blah, look what he did with Lex Luthor and
Look what he
stuff.
did
Like,
with Lex.
exactly. Like, you made him a little bit campy and a little, to kind of make him a little bit more compelling. And then once he really reveals himself, he's like, yeah, nah, this is the real me under all this and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But yeah.
Yeah.
And not to mention when you really look back on like BVS a few times, you really realize that, oh snap, Lex had all of this planned from the beginning and stuff. Ever since like that, when Superman first appeared from like Africa, Lex had everything set up.
Yeah, he did have everything set up. Like he had those, because I didn't notice this the first time I saw it, but the one guy that Bruce Wayne met up with when they
Yeah,
were
yeah,
at that fight club, he was there in Africa
yeah, yeah.
by
I know. I
Lex
missed that.
Luthor.
I know. I missed that a couple of times too when I first saw the movie. That's actually KG Beast from the comics.
KG Beast, yeah,
Yeah, like
and
yeah,
AKA Anatoly.
yeah, yeah. That was
See,
that
because
was
I remember him, I remember that character mainly from Arrow, but
yeah,
he's not like this big brute on Arrow. He's like a smaller guy that
yeah. I know.
happens to be friends with Oliver Queen in that universe.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about from Arrow and stuff. Yeah, because Oliver used to go to him for like information and stuff like that. I
Yeah,
remember this one YouTuber, Black Lion, he was comparing him. That's how I remember that this is KGB. So I was like, oh, but I think I like the DCU one better than the Arrowverse one because this guy is actually like, he's actually a fighter and stuff like
he's
that.
a
But yeah,
fighter.
right. He was in Africa. He was kidnapping Lois, Martha, all that stuff. He pushed that woman in that train. He was doing everything, like at the Fight Club. And then the last time we see him is, of course, that warehouse scene where he gets killed by Batman with the
He got
lit
killed by
flame.
Batman.
Exactly. So I'm like, man, that was a very very good portrayal.
Right. Okay, now let's talk about Batman real quick because Batman had a lot of controversy. Like I know a lot of fans didn't like the fact that he killed and things like that. People didn't like the fact that this was an older take on Batman that's going out of his way to kill criminals and he wants to kill Superman. What are your thoughts on this Batman and how the DCEU portrayed him?
I'm not gonna lie. I'm glad you actually mentioned that because that's actually next year on my notes. So one of the biggest controversies in like BVS is definitely, of course, Batman killing and stuff like that. And one of the reasons for that is because like, Batman, he has a no kill rule, of course. So editorially, they put this in place so that they can kind of continue reusing a lot of Batman villains. So in case you're like, oh, why doesn't he just kill, I don't know, Poison Ivy, the Penguin, Mr. Freeze, somebody? Well, they can come back later because Batman doesn't kill. And then originally, it's put in place also to kind of appeal to a younger audience and stuff like that. That's why they, gave, Batman Robin and all that and made his costume a little bit more colorful, like the blue and the yellow and all that stuff. So,
Hmm.
now he can't kill. And then, of course, some core things that they kind of set up, which became just a core aspect about Batman that sets him apart from like anti-heroes like Red Hood or something or Azrael, you know?
Yeah,
So really it's kind of like indirectly like the way how Batman kills inside this movie is more so like he's doing it kind of indirectly instead of just straight up or a technicality or it's just manslaughter really. Like he's not really trying to kill you, but you're kind of in the way. Like in the
yeah.
warehouse scene. Yeah, like I remember Zack Snyder was looking at that and when he was reacting to the thing and he was like, see, that guy pulled that grenade. That's not Batman's fault. And he blew up. And I was like, so stuff like that. But because for this, like, Batman, he's kind of going through like this kind of character arc similar to like The Dark Knight Returns, the comic book, where he's like jaded, he's more brutal and stuff. Obviously, he lost his parents, he lost Robin, his adopted son, and he just never really got any kind of real help for that, like for those problems and stuff. So he's been kind of masking his pain through like stuff like sex and through like kind of drugs. Not like he's taking heroin or cocaine or anything. Nah, not Batman, but he's just he's taking pills to kind of medicate himself and all that. And he's drinking a lot too. Like he's at the party and stuff. And Lex is like, "Oh, it's nice to have you over, Bruce. Well, I figured I'd drink you dry." But after the whole
Yeah.
Superman sacrificing thing, Batman he definitely tries to honor him by like following like Superman's example and stuff, which is why I kind of like he doesn't like brand Luthor by the end, which he really wanted to, and they actually were going to go that route, but then the writers and Zack Snyder were like, you know what, let's not do that because they kind of realized how that would go against like Superman's better judgment because he's trying to spend the whole movie like trying to at least stop Batman in some kind of way because he's taking the matters into his own hands by getting those criminals that have done things like sex trafficking or whatever and stuff into his own hands. But yeah, so it's supposed to be like for like Batman to slowly kind of learn and all that stuff and just move on past that and become the Batman we like know him as. So yeah,
Yeah.
and besides, I mean, come on, we've seen Batman killing like various other movies and stuff. We've seen him kill inside Tim Burton's Batman
Tim
movies, both of
Burton.
them. Right, he
He
killed Joker.
indirectly let Ra's al Ghul die in Batman Begins.
Yeah, that was yeah, that was good. But he let him in Batman Begins. He sort of kind of got Two Face killed in Dark Knight and Batman Forever.
Yeah, I
So
forgot about Batman Forever. He got Two Face killed.
yeah, he threw them coins up and yeah, Two Face fell on those spikes and stuff. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, or not those spikes, but on those rocks. But yeah. Um. So yeah, I mean, he's done that, but a lot of people didn't. But now it's kind of like with this, they're trying to hold Batman to like that prime standard that they see from like the cartoons and the video games and stuff. Oh, Batman doesn't kill, but he does it a lot in the movies,
But he
though.
does a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or
My
the
thing
first.
is, I
Oh,
think he was a really great Batman to me, as far as looks and portrayal. He felt the most like Batman on screen, minus the killing that people complained about, but he still felt like Batman. He had like that aura with him, like when we got that first introduction, like you just said, the sex trafficking, and he was upstairs branding the guy. It was almost like a horror scene. It went from being a superhero movie to like a horror scene with the intense music playing. The cop doesn't know what he's gonna run into, and then here's Batman who just branded the guy to the wall.
right. Like it's so like I know like in the extended because in the theatrical release they kind of shortened that scene because you remember in the Ultimate Edition there's a scene where the cops are like watching football and stuff before they respond to the call. I'm like, I'm not
Yeah,
gonna lie, I probably would be like that too. Before I'm like, all right, fine, let's go. And then they go in, and then like the ladies and stuff, they're like, no, 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 he's upstairs. Don't go, don't go, don't. We're scared. And
yeah. He
then they
said the
go
devil is still there. They were calling him the devil.
right, right, and then like they go upstairs, and the I think he's a rookie cop and stuff, and he like finds the guy like handcuffed to like the water heater or whatever, and then he like slowly like turns around and sees Batman. He pulls out the shotgun. He's like, oh, oh, and then he's like, Jesus Christ, he almost shot my face off. Like stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that was cool. And this
Right.
was a
And
smart Batman too. A lot of people I've seen like bad complaints or bad takes online saying that like this was a dumb Batman and he was easily manipulated by Lex and he didn't have the tools he needed, but he had a lot of gadgets and technology. He had a phone that was able
oh
to
yeah.
clone somebody else's phone and get all their information. He had a another thing that he was able to plug in, get information from Lex Luthor's party and send it to the Bat computer, so even if Wonder Woman stole the device that he had, he still had the information transferred back to the Bat computer. And
Oh yeah.
he had already known about kryptonite. I don't know what the exact time frame was, but I think he had already known about kryptonite around the same time Lex did.
Yeah. Yeah, like and Lex was trying to gaslight Batman into stealing the kryptonite to kind of play into his hands. That's why like Lex invited Bruce to the party so that he could steal his information versus just put it in his lap like that. But the reason why, I mean, Batman's not obviously he's not dumb. Even in this movie, he's still smart. But
Yeah.
Lex, though, like I said before, like Lex is like he's the smartest guy in the DC universe, or at least the smartest human. Like in the comics, Lex is probably even smarter than Brainiac, and that's a 12th level intellect right there.
So you got a
So,
troll in the comment section. I don't know who this CJ person is, but you gotta
let me see.
stop, dude.
Yeah, I'll probably check out these later. Um, you want to ignore him, or you want to just see if I can just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
all
we'll
right,
ignore him for now, but I saw his other comment. Who the hell is this SSJ person? Like, dude, get off this gym.
right.
But yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But as I was saying though, so I mean, but the thing with Lex, I mean, yeah, Lex is the smartest dude in the DC universe. So of course he can definitely. I mean, and no offense to Batman because he's the world's greatest detective and all that, but he can definitely pull the wool over Batman and stuff. That's why Lex is as big as he is to take on Superman like the way he does, you know. And that's
Yeah.
kind of how he found out both of their secret identities because yeah, Lex is just that good. Even in the comics, like, well, Lex isn't really that after Batman like that in the comics, which is why like you know because if he would, I think it would probably be a little bit of a different story. You might disagree with me on that one, like we were talking about that one time in Jay Leno's stream.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, but with Superman though, I mean, Lex doesn't really suspect Superman would have a secret identity. Is like, no, there's no way he's Clark Kent. There's no way somebody like Superman would humble himself to work a 9 to 5 at a on a reporter salary with the powers he got. No way. But this Lex, nah, he knew. But yeah,
Yeah, he definitely knew.
yeah, and there's definitely moments, but this Batman, even though he's definitely 20 years in the game, he hasn't dealt with like the only metahuman that I can really think of that he's fought like that is probably Killer Croc from the Suicide Squad. And
Yeah, which he
maybe
technically we don't really know the information, but we know that at some point off screen, I guess we could pivot to Suicide Squad. At some point off screen, Ben Affleck's Batman did encounter Killer Croc at some point in the Gotham docks and fought him throughout the years and then eventually sent him to Belle Reve in 2016 Suicide Squad.
yeah. Did they actually because it's been a while since I've seen it, but like and I think there's an extended cut because I was just at a store and I just saw it there. You saw that, right? Did they ever have like show that or was that just like oh just mentioned?
It was just mentioned. I think in the extended cut, all they did was just show a little bit more scenes with Harley Quinn and Joker, just a little bit extended scenes that they had.
Oh, okay. But yeah, like Killer Croc or something. But that's not like, oh well, because Batman's a prep time genius, so he should automatically be like able to take on Superman. No, that's why he's struggling because he doesn't know the full extent of Superman's abilities like that yet, and he's just now discovering like other metahumans like Cyborg, Flash, Wonder Woman. He's like, good God, like there's a chick that can live for like 100 years and stuff like that a guy that's a cyborg and all that, and merging with the mother box. There's fastest man alive, blah blah blah, you know all that stuff. And now, of course, Superman or Aquaman too. You know, a guy that can like this guy's in the ocean and stuff. You know, he's like able to survive the pressures and all that, and like yeah. So it's just the whole thing.
Yeah, I think it was one of those scenarios where Batman didn't really believe it until he actually saw it right in front of him. And he didn't believe it until I want to say the Man of Steel movie. And then when he fought Superman up close.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Plus, like in the comics and stuff. I mean, Batman is not going to automatically be able to like, oh, build something to just take on Superman. Usually, it takes him like years. Like, I think it was really until like Grant Morrison's run on JLA where he kind of made Batman into like that crazy level prep time type genius and stuff like that. Because I don't know if Grant Morrison wrote this, but the Tower of Babel was in that run where like pretty much Ra's al Ghul was still like Batman's plans and stuff like that for the Justice League and altered it to be more lethal and all that, just like Justice League Doom and all that. So
Yeah. Okay. I
yeah,
remember that one.
yeah. So it takes years for Batman to really be able to like create something that can really take out the Justice League or whatever. But for me personally, I think with Superman, it can go either way because sometimes even for Superman, if he's really trying hard enough and stuff, yeah, he could beat Batman even if he did have like prep time and stuff like that because he goes up against guys like Brainiac and Lex Luthor almost all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
So, what I want to ask you, this is a pretty decent question. This is gonna, since we're done with Batman versus Superman for now, um, we kind of got rushed with like Warner Brothers kind of wanting to catch up with Marvel, so they decided to do this Justice League movie after Batman versus Superman, and then for whatever reason, we got the solo movies after. So we got Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Black Adam, Shazam, all of those films came out pretty much after Justice League. Do you think people would have do you think Justice League would have been a little bit more received if the solo movies came out first, or do you think people still would have not cared regardless?
Kind of a little mixture of both, actually. I mean, Yeah, I think that would definitely be the more preferable route, kind of like with with of course the ideal is like Marvel Cinematic Universe, what they did with Phase One, and this isn't just with DC, but like of course Marvel still is kind of on that like, oh my god, Kevin Feige, he's such a genius, he did Phase One, Marvel and all that, but yeah, we get it, and yeah, that definitely did feel earned and stuff where you had Iron Man, Iron Man Two, Captain America, Incredible Hulk, Thor, and then bam, Avengers. So
Yeah.
I think it would definitely be a lot more better received if WB just waited. I don't think that's on Zack Snyder. He's just the director that's just trying to do what WB mandates him to do. But yeah, but WB they were really in a rush to try and catch up with Marvel because it was 2013 and currently like Marvel is on like what phase two or whatever. They're on like Guardians of the Galaxy that year with Man of Steel, and then 2016. I think they were kind of in like phase three at that point.
Yeah, I think by the time we got Batman versus Superman, Marvel was already almost done with Phase 3 because that was Civil War.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely think like if let's say Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and even The Flash came out in 2018 and let's say Justice League came out like that summer, how do you think people would have reacted? And if we would have gotten the original Zack Snyder Justice League?
I think yeah. I think a lot of people would have definitely liked it a lot more, or definitely been like, "Yes, this is it," or they're definitely on that Marvel train or whatever. But I almost forgot to say, but yeah, the other 50% that I was saying was like, yeah, I don't think people would have cared either way because they still showed up for those movies and stuff. Like even after like Justice League and all that, they or whatever. Like we had BVS, people still showed up for Wonder Woman, um, Suicide Squad 2 as well. Then Justice League, and then after that, yeah, Aquaman did like $1 billion, which I'm like, yeah, that might have had something to do with like all the stuff we've seen prior because it's a part of a connected universe.
Yeah, that's what I
And then
think too.
right, and then yeah, yeah, I almost said the Flash, but nope, that was years later, and just no.
So we kind of both agree that Batman versus Superman was the pivot, but after Batman versus Superman, after Justice League, we got movies like you said, Birds of Prey. We got the James Gunn Suicide Squad. We got Shazam. We got Black Adam. We got Shazam 2 and Wonder Woman 2. What do all of those what do all of those films have in common?
Lighthearted, campy, and just too many jokes.
Yes. And it feels like with all of those films that I just named, they couldn't come up with anything better. So they just wanted to throw anything at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, because I feel like, and that's the problem with the DCU and or the DC. Well, it's DC in general with like Warner Brothers and all that, and this whole cinematic universe. Even with this one, is they're trying too hard to be like Marvel. Because I'm gonna just go back to like Justice League or the Whedon cut. They got Josh Whedon. Josh Whedon, he made a lot of success with, of course, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, but also
Yeah.
like Justice League too. Even though it wasn't a great movie, but I mean, I said Justice League, my bad. Avengers, actually. He did Avengers.
Yeah.
And because he did Avengers, and they're like, all right, uh, after Zack Snyder lost his daughter and stuff, let's phase out Zack Snyder, kick him to the curve, and let's bring in Josh Whedon, the guy that did Avengers, and have him do Justice League, even though Avengers and Justice League are both superhero teams and all that stuff, Marvel and DC, it's a little bit different when it comes to storytelling sometimes, even in the comics, where you can't
Right.
just do all that with Marvel or with DC like that.
Right.
And yeah, now they're trying to do the exact same thing, even though, and plus, not to mention, Josh Whedon also has a lot of problematic stuff going on too. Going back to even like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because I've been hearing some stuff about like I don't know, he did some stuff to the actress Faith, not like any, I don't know if anything like sexual or whatever, but definitely like they had a falling out and all that stuff. And then later on with not Avengers, Justice League, when they did that back in 2017, yeah, nobody got along with Josh Whedon, like especially Gal Gadot,
Gal
Ray,
Gadot. Yeah.
yeah, Ray Fisher, definitely, Jason Momoa, all of them. And then Whedon was like, well, Gal Gadot, she doesn't understand English because it's not her first language, so she probably didn't understand what I was trying to say, what I was trying to tell her, and she was like, "No, no, I understood." Like,
That's kind of funny though.
right, you try to blackmail me and all that stuff, or blackball me and all that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
stuff like that. That's very problematic and stuff. And he was like, "Oh, this is the worst cast I've ever worked with." And then now you get James Gunn, which um, James Gunn obviously has a lot of problematic stuff, at least with his weird, pedo tweets and all that stuff that he's done in the past that got him canceled from like Marvel. And
Hmm.
now DC kind of just picked him up again and is like, all right, let's give him the keys to the DC universe so he can kind of do his own thing or whatever. And now he pretty much rebooted, which I feel like that was so unnecessary because you know. But that's just my opinion though.
Yeah. I think that they could have, if they would have tried to salvage some of the DCEU after, I want to say Justice League, because they already had some things they could have set up. We could have had a better Wonder Woman movie that wasn't set in 1984 that could have focused on maybe her going back to Themyscira and maybe another god, old god that she has to face. Because that stuff is the stuff that shines the most when it comes to Wonder Woman to me, is when
Yeah.
she's dealing with her origins, with her old god and new god origins, and she happens to be the son of Zeus, or I'm sorry, the daughter of Zeus in this universe. That stuff is the most interesting stuff that they did with Wonder Woman. And for whatever reason, they give us this Disney princess, Wonder Woman 1984.
Yeah.
They mistreated, or for whatever reason, Ben Affleck Batman didn't want to come back because we had a great script for the Batman. Most people don't realize that the Batman from Robert Pattinson, that's actually the name of the Batman movie that Ben Affleck was supposed to get. And his movie was supposed to be about him being trapped in the Arkham Asylum and him having to deal with all of the villains breaking out of the Arkham Asylum and causing terror on Gotham City because of Lex Luthor. And then
Mm.
Batgirl would have shown up, Deathstroke would have been in this movie. I'm telling you, this movie would have been crazy good.
Yeah, that would have. That just I didn't know all that plot. But that actually sounds really good. But I'm gonna go to the Wonder Woman thing because I think you know what I'm gonna say.
Okay, yeah.
Because honestly, I think because I would have rather them just set it in modern day because setting it in 1984 is like well we know Wonder Woman is gonna survive, so why are you putting Cheetah in here? Where okay whatever. Um, I kind of eased it up when Wonder Woman 1984. So I'm like all right fine. This is Cheetah's origin. Her origins changed a lot here and there. Maxwell Lord, I don't know why you casted Pedro Pascal and
Pedro
kind of made
Pascal.
exactly. And at first, like my big turnoff to it was like I'm like, why did you make him like Donald Trump? That's kind of how he was acting like, in my opinion. But then
Yeah,
I'm
he
like,
was.
yeah, and now it's kind of like, well, maybe he's not acting like Donald Trump, but then it's the 1984, so and Donald Trump was kind of like that wealthy kind of guy back then too. So I'm like, okay, whatever. But yeah, but that was just like I was like, oh man, that's weird. But I would have preferred them to just set it in modern day where there's some stakes and stuff like that. And you can probably introduce like Donna Troy definitely or Cassie Sandsmark. I think that would have been cool.
That would have been cool. I like Donna Troy.
Right. And then for that Batman movie, man, like I'm like, I don't know why they keep
We gave
disrespecting
up
that.
this for Robert Pattinson.
Right. Like, no, like why did they do that, man? I was like, bro, like Ben Affleck he definitely deserved a movie, and it's not even just the Robert Pattinson thing. Like they made a freaking Batgirl movie before they decided to make a Ben Affleck movie, and then they had to do the little
Yeah.
tack the light off thing and all that stuff. And they were like, "Yeah, we have Michael Keaton's Batman in there." I'm like, "Okay, that's great and all, but let's focus
Yeah, it
on
was supposed to be Ben Affleck Batman. It
right."
was like, I know Ben Affleck Batman was supposed to be in that Batgirl film, but for whatever reason, this was like during the time when we were like, oh, well, we don't know if Ben Affleck is still Batman. Oh, it looks like he still is. Oh, he's not. Oh, he's not directing the Batman movie, but he's still starring. Oh, but now he's redirecting. So it was like a big back and forth. And then finally they were like, oh, yeah, he's not returning as Batman. The only time you're going to see him as Batman again is the Flash movie, which was disappointing.
It was. And on top of that, I'm like, ugh. Speaking about the Flash, since I saw it last night, I was kind of like, wait. So I mean, because I already know it was the last movie Ben Affleck's Batman was in, but Flash messed up the timeline where Michael Keaton's Batman was there. Although I know it's supposed to be a substitute because Thomas Wayne, Jeffrey D. Morgan, but I don't know why they cut that. I was like, man, that sounds like an interesting idea right there. But
Yeah.
yeah, like all that stuff that they had, like Zack Snyder had that plan for like Jeffrey Dean Morgan being Thomas Wayne, Reverse Flash, Captain Cold. I'm like, that actually sounds something like that would have been interesting than well what we got, which was kind of like a sort of a rehash of Man of Steel.
Man of Steel.
Right. But what was I gonna say? Something about the Flash.
You know
But
they were gonna do Ben Affleck Batman's kind of dirty in the original plans for the Flash movie. When Flash kind of messed up time or whatever, and made it to where like there's a different Batman at the end of the movie. We were actually supposed to get another scene where Barry Allen gets a message from the Nightmare Ben Affleck from the Nightmare timeline from BVS.
that would
And
have been
he's
cool.
basically telling Barry Allen that he's for whatever reason he's stuck in a different universe and needs Barry to come and save him. And then the message just goes straight to black. And that was supposed to actually set up Crisis on Infinite Earths if we ever would have gotten that for the DCEU.
Man, that would have been cool. Well, I don't know about Crisis on Infinite Earths because that's way too big. Because the Tomorrowverse just did that, and I'm like, yeah, but still, I'm like, yeah, that would have been way better than what the Flash was or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of weird because at the end they were like, oh, look, it's George Clooney that's Bruce Wayne in this one, and I'm like,
And it's the
great,
Batman everybody doesn't like too.
yeah. Although I know you're gonna also be like, yeah, I kind of eased up on George. I gotta rewatch Batman and Robin. It's been a long time since I've seen that, so I might need a more fresh take on that. But yeah, but he wasn't the strongest Batman out of definitely not. But I'm
Yeah,
just like, you guys snuffed Ben Affleck in favor of Michael Keaton, who didn't even want to come back to being Batman back inside the 90s, and George
exactly.
Clooney. So I'm like, oh my God. And they're trying to figure out now, right now with James Gunn and stuff, he's trying to figure out like him and Matt Reeves are trying to figure out what they're going to do with Batman. Do they want Robert Pattinson's Batman to be in the DCU or is it its own thing? And it's just like, well, if you guys kept Ben Affleck and just kept him like having his own identity and all that stuff versus trying to do nostalgia bait, then we would have
Yeah,
been had a Batman movie by now. Or if you guys didn't even just do that Batgirl movie to begin with the tax write off, we would have had a
yeah.
Ben Affleck movie by
That
now.
could have been a Batman movie for real.
Right. So it's like, oh my God, you guys just keep curving yourselves.
So with the DCU now becoming a thing, James Gunn basically is in charge of this. What are some things that the DCU now going forward should do to not make the same mistakes that they did while the DCEU was a thing?
You're asking me how they could avoid their mistakes.
Yeah, or what are some things they can do going forward to prevent something like that happening again?
Well, first off, I feel like with James Gunn, because I feel like James Gunn has a huge ego problem, and well, I'm gonna just go from the top of my head on this one. I feel like James Gunn has a huge ego problem where he's always inserting his name into everything, like as we saw with that Superman thing, and I feel like he did with Creature Commandos and blah blah blah.
Yeah. James
So
Gunn's Creatures, Commandos, James Gunn, Superman. Yeah.
right. And then he's doing a lot of self-inserting, like because I'm not sure if you think this or not, but Rick Flag Sr. and stuff, I feel like that is literally James Gunn's self-insert right there. Or like
I can see
I
it.
thought yeah, or I saw like an interview where James Gunn was talking about, like crypto and stuff. My dog likes to bite my feet. And then in the the trailer or the little clips of Superman and stuff, Crypto is biting Superman's feet and stuff, and he's an untrained dog, and I'm like, yeah, you're doing way too much. So right now they gotta just James Gunn. He gets at least just either direct or just hire somebody to write the movie versus him having an on hands kind of thing and just stop being all jokey with it and treat it a little bit more seriously.
Okay. Yeah, I can agree with that take. And then what do you think James Gunn should do going forward with some of the other films? Like let's say, for instance, this Superman film doesn't do as good as he thought it would do, and it doesn't, like a lot of people end up having mixed responses on it. What's something WB and James Gunn shouldn't do just because of the critical reception?
Well, if I were them, um, well, I guess if you really felt very confident about it, just stick with what you got and stuff. Um, Again, try to like get people that actually do care about Superman as a character and stuff like that, or care about these stories, and just make it entertaining for the audience. That's all I gotta say, as far as like what I can think of, you know.
Right.
But yeah,
Okay. And then what do you think about his Batman? What do you think he should try to do with Batman or how he should do Batman since they're saying they don't know? They don't know if they want Matt Reeves or if they want to do their own.
in the DCU, to be honest, yeah, I don't know what to say about that. Just find an actor to play Batman and just take this story a little bit more seriously. And instead of Damian Wayne Robin, I feel like they gotta use like Tim Drake or something because you're kind
Yeah.
of like, yeah, because you're doing an early Superman kind of story or whatever, Superman where he's still kind of like at least give or take late 20s, let's say, or maybe early 30s, who knows. And you're already on Damian Wayne when Superman's just starting. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me, you know, because it would make sense. It was like, oh, okay. At least Dick Grayson is like 18 or he's Nightwing at this point when Superman just kind of like sort of is like, you know, a couple of years in.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. We need, I think it's too early to have Damian Wayne being rushed in as Robin, where we just had Superman being introduced. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
So with Batman, though, this might be a little bit of a hot take, but back when the DCEU was still going and we had all these multiple Batman, like we had the Michael Keaton Batman, the Ben Affleck Batman, I thought that that was kind of cool because we were already in the DC multiverse. So why not have different Batman? And as a matter of fact, I thought it was kind of a waste that we didn't have Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck in the same scene together.
You know what? That actually is kind of cool. That would actually been interesting to see Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton's Batman together and stuff, you know, because I know what you're saying, like kind of like do like a far from home kind of situation.
Yeah, because it was already delving into the multiverse. The movie felt like a discounted, worse version of No Way Home. So why not,
Or
go
yeah,
all
no
the
way,
way?
my bad. Yeah, yeah, they might as well. Oh, that would have actually been interesting. And I also kind of
But as
noticed
far
something
as the
too.
new DCU, or wait, you were saying something?
Oh yeah, I was about to say I kind of noticed something. Like you notice in the Flash, like Batman's outfit, how it has like that. They added like a blue tone to like the cape and the cowl and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's actually kind of cool though. I'm not gonna lie, and I'm not gonna lie. I mean, at first I wasn't really feeling the Flash outfit, but after watching the movie, I'm like, you know what? That's actually. I might even say this might be better. That suit at least is better than the CW Flash suit. You know?
nah, I don't think so. I think the CW suit's better. I mean, but it also depends though, because in the CW, his suits started to get uglier after season five, I'd say. I think his
Uh,
best suits from the CW were probably season one through season three.
yeah, I might say for me, it's like in the middle, like when he at least had the white logo, and then they kind of waited until like the last season to finally give him like the yellow boots and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's better than the suit he had on from like you know in the beginning with the Justice League and stuff. Because I'm like, why'd you make it all like metallic looking and stuff like that? But now I'm like, okay, this looks a little bit better in my opinion. And the Flash movie, at least, like, yeah, I wish they did a little bit more with the waist, you know, like with the yellow lightning bolt thing that's like around. Yeah, I feel like that should have been shown a little bit more, but that's just me.
I'll agree with that. We should have gotten more of that lightning bolt for sure.
Right.
Now, Ezra Miller, we were talking a lot about Batman versus Superman, but I think The Flash is kind of what really fully tanked the DCEU, though.
I wouldn't say he tanked it. For me, I think he tanked that movie, and then the decisions that WB did was just like the icing on the cake because remember, well, the Flash was supposed to be like one of the last movies of the DCU, anyways. Before they just went on a full like reboot because that Blue Beetle and Aquaman 2 was like the last movies and all that. But they went all in on the Flash, and I'm like, and they're like, oh yeah, Tom Cruise says he liked it. It's better than Dark Knight, and they put a lot of money for the
You know, they say
Super
that
Bowl.
about every movie that comes out every year. Oh yeah, we saw this movie. It's better than Dark Knight. Oh, Thunderbolts. This is better than Dark Knight.
Exactly, they try
Ironheart. This is better than like they say everything is better than Dark Knight.
exactly. I'm like, no, stop. You know what I mean? But
But
no, like
the
they were
reason why I say that though is mainly because of just Ezra Miller's troubles that was going on in real life that kind of turned a lot of people off from wanting to see this film because he had a history of like choking women out in Hawaii and going
oh
and
yeah.
kidnapping people, grooming, I think girls that was under 18 and things like that. So that definitely turned off a lot of people. I don't know if you remember back when The Flash was supposed to come out,
Oh no, I
they
remember all
did all the
yeah.
trailers.
Oh yeah, I
But
remember all that.
yeah, you remember all the
Like,
trailers where they were like, it wouldn't even show the Flash in the actual trailer. They would just say, "Coming back this fall, the Flash, starring Michael Keaton as Batman." Like they would always just feature him in the trailers and never the Flash. It wasn't until when the movie almost came out we started seeing more Flash in the movie or whatever. But they were
oh
trying so hard. They were trying the hardest not to market Ezra Miller as Flash because of
yeah, I know.
his legal troubles.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, I mean, it was a couple years ago, but I don't remember that entirely. But I do remember, yeah, they were really trying to promote the hell out of like Michael Keaton before they were for Ezra Miller. And Ezra Miller, yeah, he did all that stuff. And not to mention, we all know that he infamously like ran and all that stuff and escaped the police. And this man like deleted his social media account and dropped off the face on the earth. He was like, "You can't catch me" and stuff like that. I'm like, bro, what is this man on? you know? And then when I was watching The Flash last night and stuff, there was a scene where like this is a little joke, but there was a scene where you remember he was like vibrating his molecules, like he had Iris West in his apartment, and she was like, "Oh, can I get a beer?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure. I don't got nothing in my refrigerator. Let me vibrate my molecules through the neighbor's apartment and pull out the beer and stuff like." That's what that reminded me. I was like, "Bruh, he did not just do that." like 'Cause that happened in real life. I'm like, "Oh my god. No."
That's funny. That's actually pretty funny.
Exactly. But yeah, man, I was like, yeah. Yeah, they that would yeah. Yeah, Ezra Miller. I mean, I feel like he killed it for, definitely for that movie. I honestly, like, for Justice League, I feel like everybody and I know I stand by my decision now on Jesse Eisenberg being Lex Luthor. I'm fine with him. Ben Affleck is Batman. Henry Cavill is, Superman. Gal Gadot is Wonder Woman, Ray Fisher, Cyborg, and even Jason Momoa, Aquaman. Like I said earlier, I was like, yeah, that's probably my favorite, one of my favorite characters when I first saw Justice League. But Ezra Miller's Flash, never could stand him. I can never stand. I'm like, and SSJ, like I know you're not really a huge fan of those guys that really talk a lot and stuff like that, or those type of best friends type of characters. Me, I'm like, mm,
Yeah,
I like it. Or I'm like, I can handle somebody that's a little, chatty or a little, talkative like Deadpool or something. But oh my God, like Ezra Miller,
he
I'm
was
like,
annoying.
yeah, he would never shut up. And then when I saw that movie yesterday, I'm like, oh my God, I got a headache. And that younger one was even worse. I was like, and the way how he was laughing too, I'm like, ew.
Yeah, I don't know who thought it was a good idea to give us two Ezra Millers in that Flash movie because one was already terrible, and then we had two, and then the second one, like you said, was worse than the other one.
Yeah. Now if they had like, well, and I don't know, like with Ezra Miller, maybe if they did Grant Gustin or had him in the movie, I might have actually would have gone to see it. I was like, you know what? If they have Grant Gustin, that would have made it a little bit better for me. But
Yeah,
yeah,
Grant Gustin definitely should have been in the movie. Like, because that is the Flash. Like when most people think of well, because I know you like the John Wesley Ship one as well too, but I'm talking
right.
about most people like after the 2010s era or whatever.
Yeah,
Most
yeah.
people think of Grant Gustin's Flash, and he definitely was legendary and iconic in his role for the 9 seasons that he was
Oh,
in.
Oh
So
yeah, I
he definitely
definitely.
should have been in that movie. And what's
Oh
weird,
yeah,
they had the guy who played what's his face? He played the Earth 2 Jay Garrett or Zoom or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
They
yeah,
had
yeah.
him cameo
Hunter
for
Zolomon.
whatever reason, but
Yeah,
not Flash.
yeah, they had him as a cameo. I remember that. I was like, wait, what? The Hunter Zolomon or the Jay Garrett from the, that was weird. But yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, you know me with John Wesley and stuff. I was like, well, for me, I say that's a good kind of like, balance where I'm like, all right, he was cool as Barry Allen back in that first show. And then when
Yeah.
he came back and like he was playing Barry's dad, then he revised his role as the Flash again, and then he was playing Jay Garrett. I was like, yes, he was
He was
perfect.
great. Yeah, he was
Yeah,
perfect when he came
but
back on
yeah, but
CW and did all that.
right. Yeah, but Grant Gustin though, yeah, to me, yeah, he is also like definitely a good Barry Allen too, in my opinion. But yeah,
Yeah,
but
like if I think of like a lot, like it's kind of like when people think of Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine, to me, it's Grant Gustin when I think of The Flash for me.
yeah, yeah, definitely. You want to check out some
Yeah.
of these comments?
Yeah, we can take a look at the comment section.
All right, I'm gonna read some of this off. Let me see. Prince of Geeks. I think DC Superman movie will be good. My only problem is that the Hammer of Bavaria villain has no one knows who that villain is. You have any takes, SSJ?
I mean, yeah, this is something that James Gunn is known for, getting like a very obscure villain that not a lot of people know about and kind of making his own take with it. So I'll probably do my research on how that villain actually is in the comics. And if I'm correct, I'm pretty sure James Gunn will do a completely different or goofy take with the character.
Yeah, I've heard he. I don't think you won't have to do much research because I think James Gunn actually made up that character for the movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because yeah, I'd never heard of that either. I was like, the who?
I was like, who?
Right. CJ. I'll probably just read this in the restream or whatever. Let's see. All right, here we go. That does sound like a better Batman film from Dr. Kino. I may not
Yeah,
be
when
able
we
to
were
join
talking
you guys
about the
tonight.
Ben Affleck.
Oh yeah, I may not be able to join you guys tonight, fellas, but have a good stream. Thank you, Mal Fortress.
Thank you, Darth Mal, Malfortress.
Metafan head banger R or I say R4. Eva, what's happening, bro?
What is up?
What is this stream about? The DCU? Pretty much. I hope the new Superman movie is better. I have my doubt. I think it'll be. I mean, if I'm going to be fair, I think it might just be average at best or middling. But I can't see this being like better than anything we haven't already seen, like Man of Steel and BVS. Because I'm like, yeah, that's still the high bar, which is why everybody's comparing this to that. Because I'm like, we got something better, and now we're getting something a little bit like, you know,
Yeah, yeah. Well, so yeah, we'll have to see because like I at the very least think it'll be better than Fantastic Four, but I mean that's not really saying much at this point.
right? It's just like, nah. I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I am looking forward to seeing both these movies. I mean, probably not for good reasons, but still, I'm like, all right, let's see what all this discussion, this talk is about, so we can see how this turns out.
Yeah, and
But
it's
yeah,
not like we want this movie to do. It's not like we want to sit here and rag on movies all day because we like superhero stuff. That's why we talk about this on YouTube. That's why we like Superman and Sonic and anime and things like that. But
right,
if it's bad, then we're gonna talk about it. But if it's good, then we'll also talk about it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We definitely are. Oh, we're not just rant channels and stuff like that.
Yeah, because that definitely does get old.
Yeah, it does, and it's just like, all right, well, if there if there's a problem, we need a solution.
Yeah. So, who do you think? What do you think the end game should be for this DCU? Because with the DCEU, they did have a plan in place and they had like their own kind of end game, but unfortunately, it got cut short and Zack Snyder was moved away and they pivoted direction. So we never really got to see that end game until really, I guess, the Flash movie, which kind of just ended everything. The main
Mm.
end game for the DCEU was supposed to be like after the Steppenwolf invasion, um, Darkseid was supposed to come down on Earth and attack after the following year, and that's when Batman would have gotten Martian Manhunter and potentially Green Lantern if they would have let Green Lantern be in the movie because he was in the original script, John Stewart, and we
Right.
would have gotten the rest of the Justice League to take on Superman. And then a fight was supposed to happen. It was supposed to be like a part one, part two, where the fight happens on Earth. Darkseid destroys Earth. They teleport to Apocalypse. It was a big thing.
Man, that sounds awesome. I gotta, man, you be finding some of the good scripts and stuff. I need to read some of this, but yeah, that actually does sound pretty cool. But I can't say I do have a end game in mind for the DCU. Well, one, it because it just got started, but for or and two, I kind of never really do think of like an end game. I always just think of just keep going or just focus on like one movie at a time. But to answer your question, I think kind of like what they did with the DC AMU, the animated movie universe that was like based off the New 52. I feel like they should like just focus on making a movie and just keep making movies and stuff like that. It doesn't have to like well, it can lead up to something eventually, but it doesn't have to like be anything that's super grand, just something a little bit, standard or a little bit just a standalone kind of thing until you get to something.
Okay, so almost like if they just keep on writing their own kind of story, and if they come across a villain that they really find interesting, we could potentially cross over and lead up to that story.
Yeah. Because even with like Superman, and I'm probably gonna get into stuff that I like, that I want to see from Superman. What I want to see from Superman in general, like in well, the movies and stuff. Of course, we've been getting the same old Superman Lex Luthor rivalry just as much as we've been getting Batman versus the Joker and all that. Because that's their arch nemesis, their polar opposite, blah blah blah. But with Superman, I want to see some of his other villains come into the mix and Superman just fight it out with them. Because people are like, "Oh my God, Superman's a boring character," but he's got a lot of powerful villains that are just as strong, if not stronger than him. Like, of course, we know General Zod and Doomsday. That's two right there. And then you got characters like Mongol, Parasite, Livewire, Silver Banshee, um, Cyborg Superman, even, or here's a rare one, Imperiex. Like that's a character
And the
that,
Toy Man,
yeah, Toyman. Yeah, I can't really see Toyman like being the villain of an entire movie, but I can kind of see like, oh, okay, well,
like a
he's like
side villain, maybe.
exactly that would have been perfect. Or like Brainiac, or well, Brainiac's not a psych. Yeah, that's a main eventer, and I think that's what meant like what Zack Snyder was going to do because he was going to do Brainiac next, and Supergirl and Superman team up to go fight him. That would have been cool.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be called Man of Tomorrow. And yeah, Brainiac would have been the villain. Supergirl was supposed to have been introduced in that film as well, too. So yeah, I think it would have been a great movie. And I think some talks about the guy that plays Steel, John Henry Irons or whatever, he was supposed to be in the film as well.
Yeah, John Henry Irons. That would have been cool. I would have. That's what, and because yeah, I know we talked about it and stuff. I want to see Steel because I'm like, okay, you guys, and that's how they keep screwing over Henry Cavill too. But I'm not gonna get. I don't know if we'll get into that later or not. But with people that keep talking about, well, I want a black Superman. You already got one. It's Steel.
Yeah, it was Shaq. It came out in the
Right.
90s.
Right. We need a brain. We need John Henry. Well, at least I want John Henry Irons and stuff. I think he would be a pretty cool hero.
He was done pretty well in Superman and Lois on the CW.
Yeah. And like, yeah, he was cool in there, the DCAU and stuff like that. He's a cool, and even back in the '90s and stuff, like Steel had a pretty like ongoing run for a while. But yeah, that Shaq movie, I haven't seen it, but I heard, yeah, that killed the hype for Steel as a character in general. So I was like, damn, that's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. I want you to watch that movie. Let me
Yeah, I
know
gotta,
what you think.
I gotta see it. I think I saw some trailers and stuff. I'm like, that's weird, but yeah, yeah, I gotta see it.
Oh,
Oh,
and speaking of, because I see Upward Ninja said that why does the scrap stuff always sound better than what we actually get? Maybe it's a budget thing. It's possible, but I don't know if you ever looked into this about the original Suicide Squad movie. At the very end of the original 2016 David Ayer Suicide Squad movie, we were actually supposed to get Steppenwolf coming down to Earth and using the mother box to, I guess, seal away some of the Suicide Squad and destroy that part of the city. That would have set up Justice League, the first Justice League movie, since Ben Affleck was already in that movie with the Flash, like that. And what was supposed to happen, like all that stuff happening with Enchantress basically destroying that city and resurrecting souls, that would have led, like, alerted the Justice League. The Justice League already knew what was going on and they were going to investigate. But by the end of the movie, when they were about to solve it, Steppenwolf comes down and eliminates some of them. And then that's when the Justice League shows up to investigate, and that sets up the Justice League movie.
That would have been that definitely would have been cool.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like these behind the scenes things and how they had things set up, and then when they things don't work, that's what really ruins the movie.
Yeah, and plus I feel like DC has a problem. Or not even DC, no. The superhero movie genre currently has this problem where they like to make everything like, of course, jokey, comedic, lighthearted, and then a lot of people, especially like people online that try to like defend this stuff, be like, "But it's for kids, man. It's for kids." Okay, but we're the audience, and we're a bunch of grown men, and movies are supposed to be realistic. And plus, I'm pretty sure kids can handle it because, and I'm not sure about you, SSJ, but I know like we're huge anime fans and stuff like that, and we like anime more so than we like American comics and
Than
stuff
the
like that, right?
American stuff.
Exactly. So it's like, yeah, and the thing about anime that we like about it is like it can handle like those tough subject matters and stuff like that like very competently, or it explores those like uncharted things, and kids enjoy that. Like I have a nephew and stuff. He likes Demon Slayer and he's more into it than I am. I mean, I do like Demon Slayer. I think it's pretty cool, but he was yeah, my nephew was like, "Oh, I love Demon Slayer," and stuff like that. Um, and that's definitely not for kids. And he's like 9 and stuff, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think kids can understand it just as because in most instances, kids under the age of 10, they're gonna go to these superhero movies just because they want to see their favorite superhero in action. Like they're mainly going to the Batman for the action, the chase scenes, Batman doing investigative work, and then beating up Penguin and Riddler's goons. They're not going to the movie for the surface level things, the story that we're analyzing. They're not going into the movie for the complexity of it that we, like, as grown men, can kind of understand way more than the children can.
Right. Yeah, it would take some time before they can like, like they might come back into it and be like, "Oh, I think I finally get it now." Because I was a kid when those Dark Knight movies came out, and I was like, I come back to it, I'm like, wow, oh,
And you
they
understand
were,
it a lot more now.
yeah, it's a lot more deep than I thought. I mean, it was still cool when I saw it. Like, I was like kid when I was in elementary school when Batman Begins came out and Dark Knight, and I was like, yeah, those movies were great and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I'd
yeah,
say probably Christian Bale was probably my Batman growing up since I was in about elementary school when the Dark Knight, or no, when Batman Begins came out and Dark Knight
yeah,
was
so
pretty much, yeah, elementary, middle school. So I'd say that that's probably my Batman that I grew up with, but I still think my favorite Batman to date is Ben Affleck.
yeah, like our generational. Well, yeah, I guess Christian Bale and Ben Affleck are really our generational Batman and stuff and all that. Back in the day, I mean, I'm not sure like if you I'm pretty sure like when we were like kids and stuff, we had like well, I had like DVDs of like, oh, Michael Keaton's Batman and of course Val Kilmer and George Clooney. Like I had those on like DVD and stuff like that. So I used to watch it that way. But actually
Yeah.
coming out when I was like, oh, actually like born and seen it in theaters, yeah, Christian Bale and then Ben Affleck.
Yeah, because we were able to go and see it in theaters in our generation. We weren't able to go and see like the Michael Keaton because we weren't born then, the Michael Keaton Batman or none of those films. So I'd say that this is like our generation of Batman, even if it's not some folks' favorites, but it's our generation since we were young enough to go and see it and experience it in theaters like everybody else in the past did with those other ones.
Right. Yep.
So, if you had to rate between the universes, the MCU, the DCEU, and the Sony universe, which would you say? is, or you know what? We'll even add in the Fox universe too. So the Fox universe, the MCU, the Sony Spider-Man universe, or this DCEU. Which one was the worst?
Uh, to be honest, now as much as I love, and you're talking about like with Sony and stuff, you're talking like you're including the Sam Raimi stuff and the Mark Webb movies with Spider Man.
Yeah.
Because Sony, oh my god, they definitely went downhill once they got to like well, Morbius. I know you definitely don't like Morbius. I don't really care much for Morbius. I just thought, oh, it was a like honestly a stay at home movie kind of thing, honestly. But yeah, or the character didn't really deserve a movie, but I was like, whatever. Madam Web, God,
Yeah.
never, I never saw it, but I never saw it. I'm not gonna lie, never saw it, but I'm like, why would you give Madam Web a movie and all that? I was like, okay. And
She
then
definitely didn't need one.
for real, and then Craven and stuff. I'm like, yeah, no. Although I'm not gonna lie, I did like the Venom movies, but yeah, Fox. I do like the Fox movies more, so that's a little bit more in the lead. DCU. Uh, I'm not gonna lie, I might actually put the DCU above. I don't have a specific score that I would give it for right now. I'm so used to scores, but I would say Fox at number one, DCU maybe at number two ish, sort of, because I do think that Man of Steel and BVS definitely does clear a lot of the MCU movies. After like definitely after phase two at least, and during phase one and two is definitely debatable.
Okay.
Let's see, yeah. Then I would probably say the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then the Sony movies, because the Sony movies they kind of like they fell off.
Yeah, for sure. I'd probably I'll go with Fox first, mainly because I like the X-Men, and that gave us like the Fox movies with Hugh Jackman, and
Oh yeah, definitely. Like that's like I said like earlier. I was always more into like the X Men movies than I was like the Avenger movies like that.
yeah, and then second I'd say probably MCU, because the MCU, like, I'm not gonna take away its credit from its earlier phases. It's definitely fallen off after Endgame still, and I still will stand by that hill. There's folks that are trying to argue and say that it's still good, but it's it's really fallen off. But it still
Yeah,
was amazing during its earlier stages, so I'll give it that. And then Sony, I'd put probably in third place because, like, as great as those Spider-Man films were, really, to me, I really enjoyed the Tobey Maguire films the most out of all of them because that was the Spider-Man I grew up with and that I
same.
saw in theaters when I was younger and things like that. So that's
Right.
just to me the best Spider-Man overall. Andrew was okay. Like we had decent Spider-Man films. Even the Tom Holland films weren't really that bad as people make them out to be, but
Yeah,
with
they're
some
not.
critiques here and there. I think why the Sony universe fails the most is when they tried to get overzealous and give us all these other Spider-Man films without Spider-Man, Venom, Morbius, Craven, and Madam Web. So that's why to me the Sony verse is probably the that's probably the worst one out of all the other universes. Some
Yeah,
folks might disagree because I know they like the what is it, the Miles Morales movies, but I I mean I thought those movies were kind of generic too.
yeah. I mean, the first movie with Spider Verse, I know we kind of like yeah a little bit of disagreement on. You're like, it's a little overrated, and you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I do. It's a little overrated because of the animation and stuff like that, but that's why I think it makes it good. The animation, the songs, the voice acting, and all that. Story a little basic, bare bones, not that much, but I don't mind it. I just like all right, average movie, but across the Spider Verse, yeah, I was not feeling that
Yeah, it
movie.
was not a good one.
Yeah, I was like, well, you know what? I'm gonna definitely check it out for Miles. And then it was all about Gwen, and I was like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. And they were trying to do all that trans allegory stuff. I'm like, for what? She's not, you know,
Yeah, it was
but
just for checking boxes. They didn't need to put all that in there.
right. But yeah, it was what it was. and then they ended off on a cliffhanger, and they still don't know what they're gonna do with Spider-Verse 3, so I'm like, "Why'd you even do it?" Like, I don't even know why you guys even do it.
Right. My last question that I have right here for you is, so we know that Zack Snyder is actually friends with James Gunn. Like they've helped each other out on films and things like that. And
Yeah.
they've worked like they've been in director's chairs with each other's films. Do you think there's any possibility that Zack Snyder might come and do something with James Gunn in this DCU?
Nah, I really don't. Mainly if you're talking about, like, that picture that, James Gunn took with, Zack Snyder.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, no, I think James Gunn, he likes to troll the fans, so I'm thinking, because you know how, like, you got the people that are James Gunn fans and people that are Snyder fans and stuff, and they're going at it and everything, and, James Gunn is also going back and forth with some Zack Snyder fans and stuff like that, and he's like, "Oh, look, me and Zack are friends, and we could be possibly working on something in the future." Nah, I feel like he's just saying that to troll people. And Zach is just like, "Oh yeah, I'll take a picture of you, James," because you know Zach's a cool guy, and he's usually kind of nonchalant or chill with a lot of people and stuff. Not like even though some of them might be problematic, even though it don't got nothing to do with him, like Amber Heard or Ezra Miller and stuff. He has a good working relationship with them, but not like or it's professional, but it's not like you know,
right.
and plus, Zach isn't always going back and forth online either with people online. I started following him online, and I'm like, huh, he doesn't post a lot. Like he hasn't posted since I think Henry Cavill's birthday. So I'm thinking that he probably doesn't get online like that, given how much he gets bashed on. Is just focusing on his work, like Twilight of the Gods or something, or Rebel Moon. He's like, well, yeah.
Definitely think he was overhated for sure when it comes to the DCEU.
Yeah, yeah, like, a lot of people would just he was the fall guy, and everybody blamed him for all that stuff, I'm like, "He wasn't even all that bad." I
Yeah,
mean,
and plus
yeah.
he didn't plan like he was mainly kind of like the architect. So they kind of made him like almost a Kevin Feige to like kind of map out the DCEU. Like because when I explained earlier the end game thing, like that was Zack Snyder's plan. Like he had
Right,
everything already planned out, everything was set up, and then they pivoted because oh, this movie didn't do that good. Oh, well, this movie we're scared because people didn't like it because it was too dark. So we got to make it more comedic, and we got to get rid of Snyder. So I
and
think he was definitely overhated for no reason because all he did was just write the story and
yeah,
complete the architect the way they wanted him to do as far as the story narrative goes. He was the one just pushing it forward. Now, where
exactly.
there's some things that some of us may not have liked, sure, but it's not like he wrote everything because he wasn't the writer for everything. He was mostly just a director.
Right, he was the director, but he's like the consulting writer of sorts, so he just takes down some notes of on some ideas that he has and just pass it along. Because I think some guys like, Chris, Terrio and stuff, yeah, they wrote the story.
They
Snyder
wrote the
just
story for like Man of Steel and BVS.
Right, and Snyder was like the consultant, even though I don't think those we might disagree a little bit on that, but I don't think those movies were like that badly written. But it was okay. But that had nothing to do with Zack Snyderville. And on top of that, like for BVS, like I know a lot of people don't like BVS, and I don't think BVS like even though I do like it, and I know SSJ, you said it was like a 7 out of 10 earlier when you
Yeah, but
rewatched
you
the
can
movie.
understand the criticisms though,
Oh yeah, yeah,
I'm
I
sure.
understand. Yeah,
Like so like me for example, like when I was watching the movie on rewatch, because the first time when I had rewatched, or the first let's you know what, let's go back to the first time I watched it. When I first watched it in 2015 when it came out, I was like, okay, cool, like Batman and Superman. But then, okay, he's upset because Superman destroyed Metropolis. That makes sense. Metropolis was destroyed from the Man of Steel movie. That makes sense. But then all of a sudden, you have a Lex Luthor that's acting the way he did. We kind of went in on that earlier. That kind of threw me off. And
yeah,
then
that's what I
out
feel
of
like the
nowhere,
major part.
yeah, and then even though this stuff was cool and we know the comics and we play like Injustice and things like that, out of nowhere we get a nightmare sequence of Batman in the desert with a trench coat on and machine gun, killing parademons and shooting up Superman soldier guys, and then he gets captured. Here's an evil Superman. Like when you that like that's a lot to take in when you're watching a
Yeah,
Batman and Superman movie when it's like, okay, well, I thought they were going to be fighting each other, but now you have a nightmare sequence when Superman is going to kill him because for whatever reason he took his world away, but the world is destroyed. Why is it destroyed? Like there's so many questions than answers.
yeah, that's true. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, because we already know the nightmare sequence, so it's like it's a preventable future and all that stuff. And I know they didn't go too much in detail on it because they were going more into detail over the span of the other movies like Justice League and all that. So like, Darkseid he killed Lois, and a part of that, Superman blames Batman for that and all that stuff. So he ends up succumbing to the
To the
anti-life
anti-life
equation.
equation.
Yeah, yeah. And the anti-life equation is not just simple mind control; like it literally alters your own will. So that's why Superman is like that for Darkseid, and it's not like the first time Superman has been like controlled by Darkseid because we saw it in like the cartoon.
The animated series.
Yeah, and we saw it, and it's happened before in the comics, which the cartoon had took that from too. Like, well, I talked about this in another stream where, yeah, Darkseid brainwashed Superman with Amazing Grace, and then I just read another comic, which I might as well just put that on the stream right now since it's right here. Uh,
Okay.
this story, this is a Batman and Superman thing where Batman's trying to save Superman because he's been brainwashed by Darkseid to steal Highfather's staff and all. My bad. For Darkseid and Desaad and stuff, like yeah, Superman was brainwashed by them, so it happens. So yeah, but for me,
Yeah.
I say for the movie, this is me for like well, in a way, I see it as a work of art, and I actually kind of appreciate it a lot more now than before. So I'm just saying, for me, it's just like a 9 out of 10, just as a fan. But critically, it's like yeah, I can kind of see why.
I will say, like, there is a lot of art. Like, I do agree with that take. Like, I do think there is a lot of art to be enjoyed in the film, and there are a lot of great shots in the film and cinematography.
Right. Yeah, and the thing is, like, a lot of people are like, "Oh my god, this is the worst," because this is the worst superhero movie ever, and compared to like Ant-Man and stuff like that, like Thinking Critical and stuff. Which I mean, I do like Thinking Critical, but when he did his recent video talking about the worst superhero movies, and he put BVS on there, and then he put Ant-Man, Quantumanium, I'm like, Batman vs Superman is not that bad compared to and the first Ant-Man movie was somewhat solid, but I would say it would clear those Ant-Man movies. But I'm like, it was not that bad. But it's
Yeah,
not
I
the
agree. But at the same time, would you say that this is not how most people would have envisioned a Batman versus Superman or a Batman and Superman movie to be?
yeah, I can see it definitely.
Because,
It's
like, the tone, which I don't have a problem with, because like I said, DC is known for having the darker tone. But like when you come back from Man of Steel and come into this film with a Superman that's not really all that like he's not really all that joyful, which I understand because of the stuff that's going on around him and things being placed on his name because of the government. But it's
yeah,
still not really that joyful Superman people want. And then you have a Batman that I don't know, like this is a Batman that most
it's a
people
little
complained about because he
nihilistic.
killed people. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I get that, and I mean, I think it does definitely work for this. I mean, yeah, a lot of people aren't going to accept that or get along with that because yeah, and definitely with Henry Cavill, he has a lot of range when it comes to like because we saw him be like that bright, cheerful Superman in like the Whedon cut, where I was like, oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
like he was definitely like that Christopher Reeves type of Superman and all that we know him as. So he can definitely do that. And Zack Snyder knew that, but he was trying to build him up first to like be this guy that's kind of trying to figure himself out. He's going through the works and stuff like that. Yeah, he's a little stoic and all that, and yeah, but he's not like because people are like, oh, it's Clark Kent is not that bumbling or whatever. I'm like, he's not that bumbling. Clark Kent's not supposed to be bumbling. That's just the move, like just the movies. But
I think
yeah,
some of those people that were upset about Henry Cavill's portrayal, they just wanted Superman to just be like the Christopher Reeves Superman,
pretty
which
much.
like Superman isn't really like that in the comics all the time. He's not just a cornball like in that movie.
Right. I mean, yeah, those movies, they're definitely classics and stuff like that. They're like the first Superman movies. I get that. But Yeah, nah, Superman is definitely not like that. And I'm not sure if you saw my video, but where I was saying like how that whole Christopher Reeves thing, like, even though yeah, it's a it's the classic version of Superman and all that. That Superman never progressed as a character. He never like got with Lois. He got sort of kind of cucked, and his son is being fathered by another man. Like that's crazy,
Yeah, that's crazy to me.
right?
I can't believe people don't bring that up when they think of the Christopher Reeve Superman, how Lois Lane got cucked and he's raising somebody else's, or somebody else is raising his son. Nobody ever brings that up.
Right. I mean, that's why I was like, I think the Arrowverse honestly did do the Christopher Reeves Superman a lot better compared to that. And then, oh my God, I told you like well, I didn't tell you, but in that video I was like, yeah, with the Superman 5 script that they had in mind, they were about to kill off Superman. And I don't know, they were doing something weird where they're gonna like transfer his soul into Lois Lane, and then she gets somehow 9 months pregnant or whatever, and then gives birth to the baby. I'm like, what? And
Well,
then
that
the
would have been
baby becomes
terrible.
the new, yeah. So I don't know. They just made up stuff on the fly when it came to that version of Superman versus actually pulling from the comics. But yeah, but no, but for Zack Snyderville, I think he really did put a lot of time and dedication into BVS because in one of his like when he was like reacting to BVS and like there's a YouTube video online, it's like almost 3 hours long. Snyder said in the beginning, like, yeah, yeah, I mean, I only just made like three books full of storyboards and all that stuff for this movie and everything. And he was like, I'm like, just 3 books. Like, yeah, he was like, yeah, I could have made it four and all. I'm like, Jesus, like that is a lot of dedication right there, and it definitely does show.
I don't know if you heard, but Zack Snyder said this was a while ago when Batman versus Superman was like after it came out. He said
Mhm.
something about originally he wanted to do like it was supposed to be two parts. It was supposed to just be Batman versus Superman, and then the Dawn of Justice was supposed to be like when the Trinity gets together and they start doing like Justice League like things, and then they fight off. It wasn't supposed to be Doomsday. It was actually supposed to be Bizarro, but for whatever reason they changed it to Doomsday.
You know what? That's actually crazy. I didn't know about that, but I was thinking, if I were to rewrite BVS and replace Doomsday with somebody, and the closest example I would say would be Bizarro, but I've actually come to peace myself about it being Doomsday because I feel like, you know what? I'm fine with Doomsday because Doomsday is a lot more hype than Bizarro, and plus that really does give like Superman and Batman a challenge throughout, like at least in the movie and stuff. Because if you just did an adaptation of like the death of Superman and stuff, and I kind of looked this up earlier before the stream, like Superman Doomsday and the death of Superman, which is based off that storyline, those movies aren't really that long. It's like at least an hour and 22 minutes at best. So I'm like, yeah, I can't see them doing this for like, for a live action movie and stuff like that. So I'm like, you know
Yeah.
what? I'm fine with how things turned out with Doomsday and stuff, but Bizarro, that would have been the second best option in my opinion. But I'm like, nah, but Doomsday, I think, yeah, nah, he's definitely the one.
I think they should have went with the original Doomsday. If they wanted to do something with General Zod's body, like how they did in the first movie, I think what they should have did, they should have just kept that something later to where they could have resurrected General Zod, or they could have just said somebody like another Kryptonian's possessing his body. But I just did not like that abomination of a Doomsday they did, just
I don't,
taking General Zod's body and turning it into Doomsday. So
yeah, I
basically,
don't,
that is a resurrected, in a way, mutated General Zod.
yeah, in a way. Plus, I think Zack Snyder left it a little bit ambiguous because the real Doomsday, you never know. He could still kind of be out there because if they did the process before, there might be another thing out there. But yeah, with this General Zod thing, maybe it might be the second or third, who knows, with this Doomsday. But
Yeah, I think he said something like the original Doomsday. It's possible that Stephen Wolf may have encountered him at some point.
right. But yeah, that would be a way to bring back Doomsday. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm not gonna lie though,
Think,
General Zod was a good villain.
yeah, General Zod was the probably. I think he probably was one of the best villains that was fleshed out in the DCEU.
Yeah. Michael Shannon and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, the I will find your son. I will find him. I'll
Yeah.
find him.
Where'd you train? On a farm? Yeah. That
Yeah, he
fight,
was
bro.
great.
Yeah.
And then he kind of got wasted in the Flash movie.
Yeah, he did. I can't remember what he did besides kill Supergirl.
There was a line where he said like he killed Superman when he was a baby, when
Oh
he was
yeah, yeah,
coming to
yeah.
planet Earth. He was like, and that was before Supergirl got pissed and charged at him. But he was
Yeah,
like, "We're looking for the Codex, and there was a Kryptonian ship that landed here over 30 years ago. Unfortunately, the baby did not survive."
yeah, yeah, yeah. He did say that. I remember. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did say that. Because Superman has the little codex thing that Zod needs, and he needs to sacrifice Superman in order to terraform the Earth and all that stuff. It's a Krypton.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You got any other topics for the DCEU?
No, that's all I got right now. This can definitely be our part one, and we can do part two or something. Whenever you want on on your channel.
Okay, sounds good. But
Yep.
overall, I think the DCEU had potential. There were some things that both of us definitely liked about it, and there were some things that they could have kept on going had they had switched some things around and not had gotten scared with the box office and the audience scores. We could have had the DCEU go on for a little bit longer.
Yeah, like I would have been like, even despite, let's say, Birds of Prey, The Flash, and all that stuff, they still could have turned that around and still just like, all right, this is still the DCU. We're still gonna keep putting out movies and stuff and keep, versus start from square one because now you have a Superman that hasn't figured himself out yet with this new Superman coming out. You have what's his face? You don't really have Batman all there like that or put together. I don't know what they're doing with Wonder Woman and what else. And it's just like, yeah. Oh yeah, and a lot of continuity problems too because it's shared between like a lot of the actors like Viola Davis and a lot of events and stuff like that that happen in the Suicide Squad. A lot of that stuff or Peacemaker is kind of now shared between the DCU and the DCU. So it's just like it's weird.
Yeah. And I don't even
But
know how they're going to do Peacemaker because the first season had the Justice League in the finale. I don't know if you saw the season one of Peacemaker.
yeah, I never watched the show, but I know what you're talking about. I saw the clip online because I heard a lot of people were complaining about it. I was like, wait, they did what? And like, yeah, just for a dumb joke. And I'm like, that is kind of stupid.
Yeah, it was kind of stupid. But yeah, since we saw them, I don't know how they're gonna just make him be in this new universe or if they're gonna just say the Flash did something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And then they're like, well, this is years ago. I'm not sure if they're still stuck on the Flash, but they're like, well, we're still looking forward to working with Ezra Miller for what? Nobody likes him.
Yeah, nobody likes Ezra Miller.
Yeah, and we've seen enough of him in the Flash, so we're good. At least please just bring in Wally West and make him that white redhead.
Yes. Please don't race swap him because you know they'll do that like they did on CW.
Yeah, they definitely will. And low key, that guy, I heard he was kind of a weirdo in real life, but
Yeah,
yeah,
he is. He's
yeah,
off that sweet and love.
yeah, definitely. And I heard he identifies as a tree, so that's kind of weird too. So I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah, that's definitely weird.
right. So maybe him and Ezra Miller can do a movie together or something.
Yeah, with him as a tree and then Ezra Miller as a they them person.
Yep. But yeah, so that's just about it.
All right.
But yeah,
I,
so I
I
have a lot
definitely
of notes.
appreciate being on the stream.
Oh yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming. I definitely have a lot of notes. So once we do your stream, I can definitely probably save it for that one, definitely, or some of
Yeah,
them.
for sure. Yeah, I
Yep.
have some notes, a lot of other notes as well too. So we'll definitely save that for part two.
All right. Nice. All right. Well, thanks for joining SSJ Namikaze.
Thank you, and I will see you later.
All right. I'll see you later. All right. Peace out, everybody in the stream, and thanks for showing up.